Recording in progress.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Ben and Nate's Questions That We Ask Massage Therapists on the Internet. I am one half of your host, Nate Fay, joined by my good friend, Mr. Ben Stone. We make this podcast tick, and here's what we do, Ben. We ask questions every week on our Facebook page, and we look forward to seeing your responses. Ben and I get together, talk about them. We have a lot of fun. We drop some knowledge bombs, and we tell some bad dad jokes.
We do. And speaking of bad dad jokes, I got a little something for you here, Nate. A bartender says, "Why the nonlinear structure?" 5 minutes later, Quentin Tarantino walks into the bar.
There we go. I love it.
I don't know.
You know what?
That might be too nerdy for tonight.
I'm a big Tarantino fan.
Yeah. I saw that and I was like, that's kind of funny.
I often say in the beginning of my classes that I feel like our presentations are built like a Tarantino movie. From the end to the beginning.
Yeah. But you just need somebody with the whistling.
Right. Exactly. But it's good to see you again, my man.
Yeah. Facebook page has been hopping. We ask the questions on Ben and Nate's Questions. We ask massage therapists on the internet Facebook page. You guys answer them. And this week we're talking about the question that reads, how do you balance the hands-on and the business aspects of running your massage practice? I've asked you this before, but give me your hot take on this, like a quick 20, 30 seconds hot take on what this question means to you.
I won't even need 20 seconds.
Okay.
4 words, man. You just do it.
Yeah.
And how do you do it? You just do it. I don't know. You just do it. That's that. I'm going to start there, but I'm going to lead with this. Is every time I teach a class, one of the questions I like to just ask the group because I'm fascinated is, how many people have a front desk person? And the average per class, let's just say the average classes are 30 people. It's 2 people per class raising their hand. It's a pretty small number. So the bottom line, Ben, is that leaves us with a lot of responsibilities. So what's your 20-second gut response?
Well, I've been looking at this question for a while, and so it's kind of a cheating response because I've thought about it a little bit. My gut reaction is I feel like this question is more about structure than anything else. And so how do you it would make sense if this question said, how do you structure your business? How do you structure all the aspects of running your massage practice? That's kind of what this jumped out to me as. And I kind of am interested and excited about talking about how you run things, how you've heard other people run things, how I run things, and maybe we can learn something somewhere, somehow.
Yeah, I think so. And this is another one I would almost like people to revisit and comment on. So let's do this. Okay, so there's the fundamental thing that we do, which is we make our money in the treatment room. And that's what we do best. We're in the treatment room, we're in the trenches, seeing clients all day. But then let's maybe build a list of things that go into running the practice part of it, if this is how you're thinking. So I'll throw a few out. And so that would be returning phone calls, returning emails, clients, new clients, new patient calls, new patient emails, existing clients that need to cancel or reschedule an appointment. You got to deal with all. So maybe we'll just put that under administrative stuff. So there's all the administrative stuff: phone, email, phone and email. Of course, texting. People get a hold of you in 9 million different ways. So there's that. Man, I said to my dad 20 years ago, Dad, one day I'm never going to clean toilets again. And 20 years later, I vacuum and I still clean the toilet at my office. So then there's like the cleaning portion of it. And then there's the keeping track of your money at the end of the day and doing some accounting, throughout the day or throughout the week or every month, however you do it, and maybe some bookkeeping. So you have to get some new sheets, you got to do laundry, whatever the case is. So now maybe that's in the administrative category. So I'm gonna pause there and let you add to that list.
Well, I thought about all those things that you thought about, but I kind of grouped them a little differently. And
Okay.
I simplified it into three different groups or people, so to speak. And the first one is I thought about the owner. So you have the owner of the business. And for me, the owner is responsible for dreaming, the dreamer.
Mm.
Where am I going to take this business? It's the visionary. It's how am I going to evolve? Where am I going with the business? Setting setting milestones for, like, where am I going to be in 5 years? Where am I going to be in 10 years? The visionary. And that person, I mean, I don't know. Being an owner is kind of cool because there's not a lot of stress potentially. So then you have the admin person or the manager, the one that you talked about, and that's where all of the day to day stuff gets handled. All the things that you talked about, answering emails, talking to clients, cleaning, doing laundry, doing all the things that have to be done. And then the third group I put as the employee, the massage therapist, the one that's doing the hands on stuff, the one that is taking care of the customers. And they are all the same person, but they're all
Yeah.
different hats. You like to use that terminology. We wear different hats sometimes. Um, the massage therapist keeps the person happy, but they also have to look at how am I going to improve on my technique? How am I going to, my continuing education? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? So there's all these things, and I kind of put it under three different categories. And can you really be all three at one time? Yeah, I don't know. Probably not. Because it's
No.
it's really hard to, like, I have a hard time patting my head and rubbing my tummy, but
There's kind of a time in a place for everything. So ultimately over time, and by the way, and I just kind of was peeking at our answers as you were talking, and somebody talked about all the social media stuff now. So that didn't exist for many of us that have been doing this for, I would say, even, 10 years or longer, 15 years or longer. And now there's that sort of other pressure, what type of social media practice presence do you have to have? So there's like a whole nother hat. Keeping a
yeah,
Facebook page or Instagram updated, making it look like you're alive. So if somebody seeks you out and goes to your Facebook page, well, you haven't made a post in a year, that could give them the perception that you're closed. So there's that whole other job that we now take on potentially.
yeah. So there's potentially what, three or four full-time jobs going on
Probably, yeah,
in one person, in
in one
one, yeah.
person.
So then the big question is, how do you manage that? Like, how do
Yeah.
you, Nate, Faye, Hazardville Wellness, how do you manage all of those hats?
Well, I hang on for dear life after all these years, and I sometimes feel like I have to go about life the hard way. But I think so. First of all, I'm just gonna off the cuff mention two things. About 10 years ago, I probably found the most ideal person to come into my office on call whenever I sort of need her. And I'll say that need can go depending on the time of year. Maybe I only need her once a month, twice a month. Maybe I haven't called her in a couple months. And what I'll have her do is she'll come in and she's so good. She's so good and she's the perfect person because she just has the flexibility in her life and she's got a ton of like admin type she's like a jack of all trades. So I'll call her up and I'll say, "Hey, Lorraine, I tell her whenever you can come in, but I'm ready to use your services." And so Lorraine comes in and she files all my paperwork for me. So she does like any new clients I've had for that time frame. I just put in a file and she'll come in and she does all my input for me and populates everything into my software that I use to run my office. So she does all that. She does all my bookkeeping for me. So I just leave all the stack of my receipts there. She takes care of all that for me. And then just as an example, I had a scenario come up last week where I needed like almost like a courier type thing. So I needed somebody to deliver my taxes to my accountant who's about 25 minutes away. And I'll come back to this. So that was actually in the form of my amazing fiance, Shauna, who acted as my courier. But before I wasn't sure if Shauna could do it, I contacted Lorraine. This is my on-call admin person to
Yeah.
potentially do that. But anyway, short story long here. Then I had another situation where I had to have her call my software companies that I use and just talk through a couple database issues that I was having. So I called her up and I said, "Hey, whenever you can come in." She flew over today. It took her about an hour. And so she takes a lot off my plate. But from a financial perspective, it gives me the flexibility that I'm not tied down to somebody, that I use her truly as need be. And I don't have to think, okay, now I've got to pay somebody for 10 hours a week no matter what. So she's been like the perfect person. And of course, the second thing that I did a long time ago, and if you don't have a laundry service for your office, you can get a laundry service. It's the best thing that I did a million years ago. And that just took a lot of time. But all these other things, Ben, before you get into it, all these other things like vacuuming the office, cleaning the toilets, returning phone calls, those are things that I've built time into my schedule to do. So I have a time and the place to vacuum and scrub the old bathroom. I have a time and a place where I designate to do admin stuff, phone calls and emails.
Yeah, I mean, where in massage school did they teach you how to plan for all this?
I'll tell you what, I want my money back from that so-called business class that we took. I
Yeah,
don't know if
the
it's too late
business
to file a
class,
lawsuit.
they gave you the formula. That's what you got in the business class. And the formula was, I'm going to do 80 massages or 40 massages a week times whatever, $100, $100 a massage. And then you run all the numbers, you're like, crap, I'm going to be making all kinds of money. That
What a
formula,
joke.
that formula is bunk.
Bunk times two.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So, and anyway, tell me about your some of your scenarios. Let's hear from
Oh,
you.
you know, it's I think back to when I first started doing massage. And I was doing what is called time blocking now. Like we have to block an hour for a customer or an hour and a half or 45 minutes or whatever it is. So on pen and paper, pencil and paper, I didn't have any software to do it. It was all, on my planner. People would call me and I would answer
Yep.
the phone and I would write it down. They're coming in on this date. And I was blocking time. So I was learning how to block time. And now all this software does it for you and you
Does
can
it for
read,
you.
yeah, there's all these time hacks where learn how to block your time. I've been doing that, since day one. Learned how to block time.
Right.
And I think I've just been using that approach to take care of the things. And so if we go back to just the simpler form of the owner, the manager, and the employee, if you look at those three things, I have to block time to be an owner. I have to block time to be the manager, and I have to block time to be the worker bee, because
Yeah.
you can't be all of them at the same time. And I wouldn't say that I'm perfect at it all. You know, sometimes I block time and like this is what I'm going to work on, whatever, taxes. Well, and I don't get it done. So now I got to find some other time to do this. Like this is the time I'm going to clean the bathroom. I don't get the bathroom cleaned.
We have I don't want to go into another episode that we're going to record in the future, but it's tax season and we recently posed a question about taxes. So I don't want to get into that topic, but I'm just going to say this only because you brought it up, right? And
Yeah.
there is this aspect of we're bookkeeping to a certain degree. And the shoebox days of receipts, chucking receipts in a shoebox and giving it to my accountant at the end of the season. And now my software does like sort of some bookkeeping for me. So like again, my front desk person can come in and she can just categorize all my receipts for me. And at the end of the year, I can go through all these categories and do that. And it still feels though in some respects a little old school, say like come ish. I mean, I could actually have like a real life QuickBooks which really
Mm-hmm.
does all that stuff for you and sort of automates it a little bit more. And then rather than printing out categories, I could just print out the whole thing. And so I emailed my accountant. I said, I still feel like I'm kind of doing stuff old school. Should I get QuickBooks? I'm like, should I get a bookkeeper? And he was like, that's up to you. He goes, because it doesn't, he goes, for me, he goes, you do everything right that you need to do. And then I'm like, well, I guess I'll still sort of shoebox it. I don't shoebox it, but
Yeah.
so where do you, and let's save some of that for the next episode. But at the end of the day, I guess my point is, how can we make these things easier? And regardless, Ben, something's always going to have, uh, something's always not going to get the attention. So some
You're
things are going to fall by the wayside.
you're always going to have to sacrifice something in order to get something else. Let's just say
Totally.
back when I was a professional foosball player, I sacrificed. I wanted to be off work at 6 o'clock every day, so I sacrificed my work hours to go to be on the professional foosball tour. Now with photography, I want to be out for sunset. So I have to think about, okay, do I want to be working past sunset? That kind of thing.
Mhm.
So you're always going to have to sacrifice something. And that comes back to, when the owner is the visionary, the dreamer, you can't always be a dreamer. You have to sacrifice being a dreamer to be the doer, to be the manager that's doing all these things. So these three groups are not all working at the same time. Sometimes the manager has to take over for a couple months and just get stuff done, and then that clears up. You're like, hey, you know what, I'm going to start dreaming about. And I do this with the podcast, like what can we do, what can we do different with this podcast, next week, next month. And you and I have talked about setting up, hey, we're going to get this many episodes in by the end of the year, so that's the dreamer, that we, because we're both owners and we get to dream about, hey,
Right.
where is this going, and that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it's fun to be the dreamer. It's not fun to always be the doer that has to clean the toilets and do all that stuff. But
Especially, Ben, especially, and this is speaking from a real life example, as a matter of fact, today, since you asked, especially today when your client has to use the bathroom after the session and comes out and tells you that your toilet won't flush at all.
oh,
And you're like confused. So this is now another thing. Now we've got to wear a different hat. So this is like a fifth hat. And I go, well, what do you mean it won't flush? And clearly he's embarrassed because clearly it wasn't the old number one. Okay. So with that being said, I'm like, well, what do you mean? I said, you just pull the handle. He goes, well, is there a magic trick? Because I'm pulling the handle and it's not going. So, and clearly he did not want me to go in the bathroom. So I have a sink right outside my bathroom. And so he actually said, well, is your water shut off? So he thought that ahead of me. And I said, well, I said, let me turn on my sink. And of course, I turn on my sink and there's no water.
Oh,
So now I've got now, okay, so here's I mean, you brought this up, Ben. So so now but now we've got this other hat. So now all of a sudden I've got to shift gears and become property manager, and I've got to quickly call my landlord, hope that he answers. And I called my landlord and well, miraculously he answered. And I said I was like, "Hey," I said, I said, "What's going on?" I said, "Literally have no water." And he said, "Oh." He says, well, they're doing a building inspection today. And he goes, I'm sorry. He goes, I didn't know they were shutting off the water, but it should only be for a few minutes. And I said, okay, like, hey, situation avoided to what could
yeah,
have been in my head. And again, I have PTSD because I had a previous office and landlord where when things went wrong, it was 5 days later it got fixed.
yeah.
So anyway, I had to switch gears, call the landlord, take up this time, and now I've got an embarrassed client. And so I look at him and I said, it's fine. I said, you don't, I don't want you to stick around. But now I've got to move on to my next session. I don't know when the water's coming back on. Throw an out of order sign up on the bathroom door, barge into my other staff's room because they were seeing clients. And I was like, hey, sorry to interrupt, but just so you know, I'm going in the session and here's where we're at.
And then Quentin
So,
Tarantino walks in.
and said, and then you started hearing the eerie whistling.
Yes.
So yeah, so now we have these extra as owners in the business of running a practice. Now we have this stuff that come now that's not a regular thing, thank God, but it maybe once in a while you're just gonna have a building problem.
And I think you said it earlier. The easiest way to take care of these things is to get help, is to hire somebody to do this stuff. But we know we don't all live in that world where we can afford to do that.
Right.
We can't all hire Lorraine to come help us when we need her.
No, and
Um,
and yeah.
so my curiosity now is I don't know if we've had other people in our respond to our question on our Facebook page, Ben and Nate's questions we ask massage therapists on the internet. Maybe we could look and see what other people do. Or
But
do you have ideas of what other people have done? Yeah.
I do. I want to get into that, but only because I like talking to you so much
Yeah.
about this stuff. You talked about, hey, we all can't afford somebody. And I sometimes would say to that too, like, or I'll ask myself that question. And I'll tell you, every few months, I'm like, you know what? Maybe I should just hire somebody to be at my office 8 to 10 hours a week, fielding these phone calls, fielding these emails. Now that's money out of my bottom line and my office's bottom line. But for me, as busy as I am during the day, during my work day, during my set hours, I'm not going out of my hours. So I'm not coming home and doing that stuff. I'm working within my set hours. And it's just not worth it for me. And that's okay. And I think you have to sit back and say, and make that decision for yourself. What's your worth? How worth it is it for you? To have not only, I mean, Lorraine's only a very like an on call. She's my
Right.
911, but to have somebody 6 to 8 hours a week, and that 6 to 8 hours a week can look like being totally busy or just sitting around waiting for something to happen.
Yeah, hiring someone to do the laundry. What about a virtual assistant? How could a virtual assistant be beneficial in?
Well, I'm in this modern world of AI and virtual assistants, I'm kind of starting to maybe think about in the next year making that a dream and a goal to potentially see if that's an option for Hazardville Wellness.
Yeah.
So I've certainly like thought about that stuff. Um, and I just want to bring up the social media thing too before we get into answers because it's the one thing that we didn't talk about. And but before I do that, and Ben, and for you and for me, and 20 years of doing this, and for many other people doing it, clearly, you want your business to grow. Your business ultimately grows in ways that even though you dreamed of, you've never dreamed of, right? And all these cool things happen. So the amount of phone calls, emails, and then stuff that just compounds with the busier practice, this is stuff that you didn't have 15 years ago. So a lot of these kind of things that we're talking about, I mean, did that exist for you 20 years ago? Did you need a laundry service 20 years ago? Did you need 4 hours a week extra to do all that stuff?
No, but I did have a lot of laundry. And I was thinking about that
Yeah.
back back in the day when I started 23 plus years ago. It was on the verge of the internet, but nobody used the internet yet. There was no online scheduling. It was the phone book. That's where you went to find and yeah, it sounds funny, but it cost $300 a month to advertise in the phone book. They only printed the phone book one time a year,
I
but you
know.
still had to pay every month to have your business listed in the phone book. And I think about this and I'm like, how much easier is it now to get your name out? And I feel like one of those old guys that's talking about, oh, back in my day, we had to walk to school uphill both ways, back and forth to school. And, it's like, well, yes, if you compare things back then to now, they were harder. But back then, there was no other option. That's just
That's
what
all
you
we knew.
did. Yeah.
Sure.
You had to do the hustle. You had to go networking. You had to do the things to get your name out if you didn't want to spend that $300 or whatever it was a month on the phone book, which I never, I did it one time and it was just, for me, it just wasn't worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. Social media to me for my business is, I'm just word of mouth. And I don't, yeah, I have a website, and every several months I do make a couple minuscule changes on my website, just because the way I understand it, that helps to keep your Googles and all that stuff sort of going. And, I have a Facebook page. I mean, other than an occasional post, just to sort of, like I said earlier, make it look like I'm alive. And what I found that a lot of that stuff for the type of practice I have, like it matters for looking like I'm alive, but it doesn't matter. Like content posting doesn't matter for my business because people don't care. People care what happens inside like the treatment room. So me writing a blog about neck pain, people don't care about that, you
You're
know?
established enough where you don't have to
Sure.
reach out and get
I don't have
those
to
people.
convince.
No.
And then there's this whole idea of reviews, right? Pandering for reviews. And there was a long time where I felt like I had to like ask people for reviews, and having so many reviews. And again, to the say average person analyzing my social media, I mean, I've been in business 20 years. I only have 53 reviews because I don't pander for reviews. Once in a while, I'm like, oh, yeah, I should probably ask people. And then, of course, people go home and they forget about it. I
Yeah.
mean, by statistically, I probably should have thousands of reviews, but that hasn't made or broke my business.
Yeah, all the fundamentals of running a business are there. And if you take care of those, the social media, I mean, yeah, if you're just starting
Yeah,
out, maybe it's important.
sure.
It is fascinating to me though, the influence that social media can have. And let me give you an example. There is an Instagram, there's a video on Instagram or a business, I'll call them a business. And it's one of those things where, someone gets launched into the air and then they fall down and then it cuts to the other person and
Yeah.
they roll out, and then
Yep.
this person gets up and she says, "I'm Judy. I make the best pancakes. Come here for breakfast."
Totally.
And it's hilarious. And my wife and I were talking, and we are talking about maybe where we should go for vacation. And she goes, "Let's go get pancakes at Judy's." And I go, "I don't even know where Judy's is at. Like what state? Like I don't. So I had to look it up, and apparently Judy's is in Illinois. Have you ever seen Judy's thing?
I know the type of ad you're talking
Yeah.
about, but no, I haven't seen that one.
She is using this approach, and I feel like she's doing really well with it. She's getting a lot of people, a lot of attention, and I think people are coming just because it's I don't she's a micro influencer, I guess you could call it.
Yeah,
So
sure.
people want to go and be part of it and take pictures, and it's almost like meeting someone almost famous. And
Right. And I think when it comes to like restaurants and things like that, like absolutely, but I'm not gonna like why do you or I need to make a video like with that type of say social media trend? And I don't need to get a hold of somebody 600 miles away. Whereas like Judy, like now you're like, "Oh, cool. Like I actually kind of want to go check her restaurant out. I bet you it's like amazing."
yeah,
And
and Judy doesn't sell her time like we do.
yeah,
She
right.
sells
Right.
pancakes. So she can dish out pancakes, here and there and
Yeah.
everywhere. It's
But
Yeah, go
I,
ahead.
no, you said something that was just interesting to me too, is that, the days of like TV and movie actors, it's kind of weird how like we don't, we look at these Instagram people more as like Judy's, you want to go meet Judy and get a picture with her. Like she's,
Yeah.
you know, versus, you know, I don't know, versus whoever, like Bruce Willis, right? Bruce
Yeah.
Willis, who we all loved growing up. And now
Yeah.
we're thinking like all these amazing movies, and now we're thinking about Judy the Pancake Maker.
Yeah.
I watched his father and son on Instagram that go around and they make these so-called travel videos with sort of a twist because part of it they're doing these like audit First Amendment audit things that I like to watch. And like I'm like, I want to meet these guys. Like to me, they're like my Burt Reynolds and Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah. It
So
it is interesting. So you and I, we don't necessarily need that, but back a few years ago when I was running a larger business where we had, 6, 8, 9 employees, that thought crossed, like how do you bring in people? I need to bring in people because I want these people
right.
to be busy. And it's not just they have to be good, and you have to teach them to do all the business things, and all to be able to listen and do all the fundamentals. But also you got to let people know that you exist.
You exist.
A billboard is not enough, and that's where social media comes in for some of these businesses, like the small businesses like you and I have. I mean, it's the word of mouth is really the best.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
get a few contacts that are chiropractors, PTs, that kind of thing, you're golden.
Right. And I want to get to answers, and this is another
Yeah.
thing. We could have a 2-hour episode here. But last thing I'll probably like just jump into is that I do, and just following massage therapy Facebook groups. One of the questions by the way, Ben, I'm just gonna like throw this out there off the cuff. I noticed a lot of people asking questions on the internet in the massage therapy world. I'm just saying.
I
I'm
mean, are we
I'm
trendsetters
I'm
or
I'm feeling a little copied these days because all of a sudden I notice a lot of these people are doing exactly what we're doing, not making a podcast, but just asking questions. But anyway,
I personally take that as a
I
compliment.
take that as and exactly, stealing work is the best compliment. Stealing
That's
ideas is
right.
the best compliment. But
Yes.
anyway, one of the questions that I see people ask a lot is, what do you do as a side gig? Like, what's your second job? Like as a massage therapist? And I don't know how to think of, you know what I'm talking about, right? So I don't know how to like really think about that because I'm thinking that, massage therapy can be a very part-time job for people. The therapist that works at my office, she only wants to see 14 clients a week. and she's content with that, and I'm happy to have her. She's got a great space within my office, and so that might lend to her doing something else. But speaking personally, I have a second business. You have a second business. You have a seminar business, or you have a lecture business, right? You have essentially an online seminar business.
Yeah.
So that's like a whole nother job and needs all that time too. So anyway, it sounds to me like more massage therapists than we maybe realize have some sort of secondary gig. You do, right? You go out and do an ethics class every so often.
Yeah.
Essentially, that is a second job. It's got its own set of phone
Brings in
calls,
income.
emails, advertising, admin stuff. I don't think you have to clean any toilets in that business, but you certainly have more probably admin stuff to do in social. That actually is where the social media comes into play, and the importance of that.
Yeah.
Social media is deeply important for my seminar business.
Let me tell you a statistic, and this is an older one. So the AMTA every year has some kind of survey that they put out, and they poll massage therapists, and they get this. They do a bunch of research about where massage is in the world, how many people are using it, that kind of thing. Well, the question, this is probably going back to 2012, I'm going to say, but a question that they used to ask was, do you how did they word this? They would ask massage therapists if they were seeing enough customers or if they wanted to see more. And at that
Mm,
time, 50 to 60% of the respondents said they wish they could see more clients per week or per month or whatever,
okay,
which told me either they're not busy enough or they have a second job or something is keeping them from meeting their whatever their goal was, which I
sure.
thought was important, was interesting. And what I've noticed is the AMTA has stopped asking that question. I think I stopped seeing it probably in between 2012 and 2015, but that was
Hmm.
something that that I've included in my ethics classes, is that stat. And I think it's a relevant stat. I don't know what the numbers are now, but I would be curious to see, are massage therapists getting the number of clients they want to get, or are they still wanting to get more? I think that's an interesting thing to think about, which is
Yeah, and I also, yeah, and outside of the probably natural application for some massage therapists that want to go into teaching massage therapy, I also feel like that's been like a natural transition um, for some of us, many of us, maybe. But then, yeah, I always kind of question like what and why do people need other side gigs? And I've always wondered that, like, are they just not busy enough? And whatever the reasons are there.
yeah, I've always been curious about that. Like why isn't massage enough for you? Or are you just one of those
Mhm.
people that just wants to do lots of things, which is,
Yeah.
that's cool too. I like to do lots of things, but massage is my main thing.
Well, it's my main thing too.
Right
So
on.
answers. First of all, I'm going to go right to my favorite answers. So
Go to
once
your
again, the
favorite
question:
answers.
how do you balance these things? How do you balance being in the treatment room and being outside the treatment room?
Yeah.
And our friend Amanda, I don't.
Good
I
answer.
mean, honesty, right? So, but she, so we sort of said, well, there's no, tell us more. And so she went on to say she has a great team of therapists that work with her. She couldn't do it without them. Like so many of us, like we have this kind of team and village. Um, and then, during sports season, right? She has a hard time taking care of her office for whatever reason. Maybe she has kids. Washer and dryer in the office. I see a lot of massage therapists do that. So that's a big help when it comes to laundry. And all those little things cut down on our time or give us more time to do probably some of the things that we want to do. Um, I just like the honesty from some of these answers. Another person, I've realized that I'm just not good at it, but I'm a great employee. So she lets the front desk people, the managers and owners of the spa that she works at, do that stuff so she can focus on hands-on stuff. And I'm sure I could work for myself, but the stress of the overhead marketing and making sure I had enough clients would drive me crazy. So, listen, if you're like killing it, being a massage therapy employee, which was unheard of back in the day, and if you're killing it and you're happy, God bless you. I think that's amazing.
I tell you what, I ran the numbers. This has been a while back. I ran the numbers of how many hours I was putting in as self-employed versus and how much I was getting paid self-employed versus the employee, what the employee would make. And it's honestly not that much of a difference. But,
Mm,
I was being honest and I was adding in all the hours, I'll call it unpaid hours, that is
sure.
still like cleaning the toilet, doing the laundry, doing all those things. Like that's stuff you have to do. And that's part of, I mean, you have to count that as hours if you want to be honest
Yeah.
with yourself. And so I did all that. And there was not a whole lot of difference being an employee versus, being the owner.
Yeah. Yeah. Scott talks about how social media seemed to be like a big thing for him, and he talked about, um, wanting to, I'll just kind of read like his marketing, right? Longest time out, he was doing his own website, so creating his own social media posts, so on and so forth. And then went on to basically say, hey, I'm gonna pay other people to do that stuff for me. So finding the right website marketing pro and trying to get some of his freedom back. And so like that's cool, right? And so, but that's an aspect of his business that was important to him. So social media, website marketing, Instagram posts were important to Scott and taking up a lot of his time. So he says, I hired people to do that to give him back his time. And I like that answer just because I think both you and I agreed that that's not an important aspect of our practice. But what's an important aspect of my practice is, a lot of the admin stuff. That probably seems to be my number one busy part.
And don't you think that what's important to you changes? There's phases where one thing is important.
Totally, totally. And there was a time, and again, I'm not I that's their individual experiences with what they're dealing with to help them manage that stuff. And that was part of the question. And yeah, absolutely. I think several years ago, that whole website social media thing was consuming me. And I remember every Monday night I would come home after a long day. I have a table and a setup in my room, and I would get shot on the table and I would get the ring lights and the cameras on, film a bunch of social media content and techniques, and edit them all down. And it was just taking me hours to do. I got really good at it. So I learned a lot. But I was like, why am I doing this? It's not doing anything for me.
Yeah, I think we all have those moments where it's like we feel like we have to do something and
Yeah.
we forget about why are we doing it?
Yeah.
And
So I,
sometimes
I
there's just things that we like to do and we just do it because we like it.
totally, absolutely, absolutely. So I think what I liked about everybody's answer is everybody gave a heartfelt what's been what's taken away from them and what they did about it. So it was important to them and what they did about it. I think that was great.
Yeah. Man, so much good input that we get, and sometimes I just kind of breeze through these responses that we get and I'm like, okay, okay. But then when you and I sit down and we talk and we pull out all the bits and pieces and it just makes that's what makes this show tick. I love it.
And what's kind of cool is I sometimes so we posted this question, by the way. We have so many questions posted, Ben. So this is a question that we posted almost 3 months ago that we're just getting to, which is kind of cool in a sense. So a lot of those answers that I look back on, and I'm just revisiting them now as we're summing up our episode. But I think what's really nice is that it's everything we talked about, from the laundry, to the accounting, to the cleaning the toilets, to the social media. And I think what we're seeing is that other massage therapists, those are the top three or four things that everybody's dealing with.
Yeah. So here's the question for all of you listening right now. What did we miss? What do you think that we missed? How do you handle managing the hands-on aspect of a business versus the other aspects of the business? What do you do that we missed? Because we want to know. Come back to that question, leave us a comment, send us a message. We'd be more than happy to revisit some of this stuff with you.
Send it
S-
to the net.
Send it to the net. So Nate, tell me, should we go into impressions? What are your big
I,
takeaways from?
honestly, I think that was my takeaway. I think my
Yeah,
takeaway was that we sort of improvised these four categories at the beginning, and then upon revisiting our answers, I think we kind of nailed with what everybody's dealing with.
yeah. Like I think if I were to give a takeaway, I would say kind of the same. There's no one right way to do it.
Yeah,
Is you've got to
yeah,
find what works for you, and you have to be able to recognize what you're good at and what you're not good at, and be willing to ask for help. And maybe you don't have to pay for help right away. You could say, "Hey, I need help with this. Can someone help me?" Because it can be a little tough to ask for help from people. But I know maybe some
yeah.
people that are established might be willing to give a little bit of their expertise and time. Who knows? So there's no right way and there's no wrong way. It's just like you said, you just got to do it.
It's hard as an adult because sometimes asking for help can feel like a sign of weakness.
Yeah, what did I just saw, on the social media, the Simon Sinek guy.
I
And I
don't know.
think
Well, I'm gonna tonight because you said his name, so now my phone's gonna probably
okay.
do something weird.
Simon Sinek is the he's the guy behind the why question. He wrote a book, and also this probably some of this is Brene Brown, but he talks about earning trust is being able to ask people for help, not giving help, but
Right.
it's being humble enough to ask someone for help, and that's how you gain trust from people, is being in a place where you need help and recognizing that, hey, I need help, and to ask for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Ben, as always, I enjoyed spending another Tuesday night and banging out another podcast episode number
Probably 57.
probably 57. It is 57, and we'll see you guys next week for episode 58. Have a good night.
Thanks for listening.